Russia's energy empire is officially crumbling as of today. Those massive strategic oil facilities that the Kremlin has been touting for years as untouchable and impregnable are now engulfed in flames. The thousands of kilometers of logistics routes stretching from the Urals to the turbulent waters of the Black Sea have been paralyzed by Ukraine's drone storm. The skies over Perm are pitch black. The people of Tuapse are being evacuated in panic, and Vladimir Putin was forced to break his beloved silence to make a statement. For Russia, the rules of the game haven't just changed, the table has been completely overturned, and the pieces are shattered. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MrGEOPOL Analysis Center, where strategy, military innovation, and the raw facts are laid bare. I'm Charlie. Today, we'll decode in full detail how Ukraine is systematically destroying Russia's oil infrastructure deep within its territory, the massive panic the Kremlin has fallen into, and the air defense crisis that can no longer be hidden. How long can an empire survive once the fuel in its veins is cut off? Is the near-total engulfment of that massive facility in Perm a simple tactical success, or proof that Russia's air defense umbrella has completely collapsed? In a moment, when I explain the critical shortage of Pantsir missiles faced by Russian military leaders and why Russian troops on the front lines ran out of fuel, you will understand much better why the Kremlin was gripped by such profound terror. If you're ready, we're diving into a deep analysis of those critical regions where flames rose into the sky, the Perm and Orsk front lines. Last night was a complete nightmare for Russia's interior, but this time the nightmare wasn't just a dream, it was reality itself. The cities of Perm and Orsk awoke to violent explosions lighting up the horizon. Long-range unmanned aerial vehicles belonging to Ukraine's security service, SBU, struck a strategic oil facility near Perm with pinpoint accuracy. The first images emerging are horrifying. Nearly all the tanks are engulfed in flames, and the fire cannot be brought under control. This is not merely an attack. It is one of the largest non-nuclear strategic strikes ever delivered against Russia's internal logistics lines. The sky over the Urals, Russia's energy heartland, has gone completely dark following claims that Ukraine attacked an oil pipeline facility. According to reports by the Moscow Times citing local sources, the smoke plumes have spread over such a vast area that sunlight is no longer visible in the region. This is a signal that Moscow must now hear and cannot escape. Ukraine is no longer merely striking tactical targets along the border. It can penetrate deep into Russia's economic lifeline and its most strategic reserves. The fact that a center like Perm can be struck from thousands of kilometers away proves that Russia's vast geography has become not a shield, but a vulnerability. According to RBC Ukraine, residents of Orsk and Perm spent the night in shelters, as the burning of oil infrastructure turned the city into a veritable furnace. Dear viewers, if anyone thinks the explosions in Perm are just a regular fire, pay attention to this technical detail. Information received as of the morning of April 30th confirms that the oil facility in the Perm Krai region was struck for the second consecutive day. This is no longer an accident. It is a systematic destruction operation. The Kyiv Independent and local sources report that at least 2 more massive tanks have exploded at the Transneft pumping station. So why here? Because this is the lifeline of Russia's main pipeline system, where oil is distributed in 4 different directions. The Alpha Special Operations Center, affiliated with the SBU, struck not only the fuel supply, but also Russia's export capacity, crossing the border by 1,500 kilometers. Most of the parts needed to repair these facilities are subject to Western sanctions, and Russia has no spare parts on hand. The real reason Putin broke his silence by warning of serious environmental consequences isn't environmentalism. It's that the Russian budget is losing millions of dollars every second as these fires rage. Let's move on to the Tuapse refinery on the Black Sea coast. This has been Ukraine's target for the 3rd time in the past few days. However, this latest strike was far more devastating than the previous ones. The intensity of the attack and the secondary explosions it triggered were so severe that Russian authorities were forced to issue an emergency evacuation order for the city. Please note, Tuapse is no longer a peaceful port city. It is a battlefield. Analysts are now referring to Tuapse as the second Belgorod. The physical destruction and horror of the war have reached even Russia's most prestigious industrial and port cities. The Institute for the Study of War, ISW, reports that the Kremlin has fallen into a genuine panic due to the attacks on Tuapse. Why? Because Tuapse is one of the main arteries of Russia's oil exports via the Black Sea. Its disruption means a direct cutoff of the foreign currency flow, fueling Putin's war machine. Although the Kremlin is trying to spin these attacks as local fires, it is now impossible to hide those massive flames rising from satellite imagery from the global public. Field reports dated April 28th detail how these fires have dealt a blow to Russia's operational capabilities. At this point, it is important to note Putin's stance. Putin, who for years has either ignored failures or shifted blame to lower ranks, has finally broken his silence regarding the attacks on Tuapse. This situation demonstrates that the scale of the crisis within Russia has grown too large to be swept under the rug. Putin was forced to make a statement because the Russian people have begun asking why they are no longer safe on their own soil. This breaking of the silence is a sign of strategic vulnerability for the regime. Ukraine is not just burning oil, it is melting Putin's image in those flames. So, is Ukraine targeting only onshore facilities? Absolutely not. The infamous network of tankers in the Black Sea, known as the Shadow Fleet, that Russia uses to circumvent sanctions, is now a direct target as well. Near Tuapse, kamikaze unmanned surface vehicles belonging to the Ukrainian Navy struck the massive sanctioned tanker named Marquise with a direct hit. This tanker was one of the most critical components of that secret network, smuggling Russian oil to global markets through illegal channels. This attack declares that Russia no longer has a single safe square meter left in the Black Sea. Russia is being driven out of the Black Sea, and this process has now reached a point of no return. Despite Ukraine lacking a conventional navy, it has managed to confine Russia's massive Black Sea fleet to its home ports, thanks to the autonomous naval drones it has developed. Now, civilian-looking military logistics ships and sanctioned tankers are being sent to the bottom of the sea one by one. Russia's logistical dominance in the Black Sea has officially come to an end. Here, we must ask the most critical question. Why can't Russia stop these drones? The answer lies in a technical disaster leaked from Russian military sources. A Russian military chief admitted that the army is facing a severe shortage of air defense missiles needed to combat drones, particularly in the famous Pantsir systems. A Business Insider report clarifies the situation. Ukraine's cheap but effective drone swarms have, so to speak, depleted Russia's expensive and limited supply of missiles. The impact of this technical crisis on the front lines is, in a word, catastrophic. Following systematic attacks on Crimea and refineries, the Russian military has faced a massive fuel crisis. It is reported that Russian tanks and armored vehicles are unable to move due to a lack of fuel. When the logistics chain breaks down, even if you are the world's largest army on paper, your presence on the ground amounts to nothing more than stationary targets. Russian soldiers are waiting in the trenches not only without ammunition, but also without fuel and without protection. The missile shortage underlying the collapse of Russian air defense is no longer just an allegation. According to reports by Flash Beskresnov, an advisor to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Russia has begun mounting aircraft missiles onto trucks in critical cities like Oriol because it can no longer find missiles for its Pantsir S-1 systems. Can you believe it? A superpower that claims to have the world's best air defense system is now attaching R-77 air-to-air missiles to truck beds to stop drones. This hybrid desperation is the clearest evidence that the Russian defense industry's production pace cannot keep up with Ukraine's drone production rate. Even Belarus's start of sending urgent shipments of chassis and spare parts to Russia isn't enough to close this gap. Russian military analysts are now speaking openly. Drones are so cheap and so numerous that trying to shoot them down with Pantsir missiles is like hunting flies with golden bullets. The result? The bullets are gone, and the flies are burning down all the refineries. President Zelensky's latest statements, however, reflect the other side of this picture. Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine's position on the battlefield is at its strongest level in the past 10 months. This is not propaganda. It is a summary of concrete realities on the ground. As of April 29th, Russia's losses have reached staggering proportions. The destruction of 1,180 Russian soldiers and over 1,775 drones in just the last 24 hours proves how the war has turned into a grinding monster. Combined with modern ammunition from the West and domestically produced drones, Ukraine's strategic superiority signals the end of the road for Russia's cumbersome military structure. The Russian army has entered a war of attrition, but contrary to its plans, the side that is now being worn down and depleted is Moscow itself. Please examine this table closely with an expert's eye, dear viewers. The distance between a refinery in Perm and a port in Tuapse spans thousands of kilometers. This demonstrates that Ukraine has now defined Russia's entire territory as a battlefield, an operational zone. Russia's energy revenues were the sole lifeline funding this war. Now that lifeline is being severed one by Ukraine's smart munitions. The massive panic within the Kremlin is not merely the result of a military failure, it is also the footsteps of an impending economic collapse. The Russian people have begun to see that the distant fantasy known as the special military operation has now reached their own kitchens and gas stations. The forced evacuations in Tuapse are the greatest proof revealing the true face of the war to the Russian elite. Putin has broken his silence because lies are no longer enough to put out the flames. A quick reminder at this point. Your support for the MrGEOPOL analysis desk is vital for the continuation of this independent content. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. So, how much longer can Russia withstand this energy war? What will the Kremlin do when its air defense missiles run out? No one knows which strategic city will wake up in flames after Perm. Ukraine's strategic paralysis tactic possesses enough leverage to force the Russian army into an uncontrolled retreat on the front lines. The course of the war is now measured not just by the number of trenches, but by the number of refineries set ablaze. Let's take a closer look at the technical details of the collapse in Russia's air defense systems. It's no secret why the Pantsir systems have proven ineffective against drone swarms. While Ukraine keeps these systems' radars occupied with decoys, it slips through the gaps with its actual lethal drones. Russia is being forced to spend $1 million on a missile to hit a $10 decoy. This is not a sustainable defense model. The result is clear. Perm is burning, Orsk is exploding, and Russia's sanctioned tankers in the Black Sea are being sunk one by one. The Urals were historically Russia's safest industrial regions. Today, however, Ukrainian drones have shattered that taboo. The reality that no place is safe for the Russian people, from the Arctic to the Black Sea, is shaking the regime's credibility to its core. Putin breaking his silence to say, "We are addressing the situation," is actually an effort to extinguish the fire within. However, the flames on the ground speak far louder than the words in the press. As Russia's energy revenues decline, not only the war budget but also public services will shrink. Ukraine's strategy of targeting Russia's oil infrastructure is, in fact, a massive economic siege operation aimed at collapsing Russia from within. And in this operation, Ukraine has achieved far greater success than expected so far. When Russia can no longer refine its own oil, the gears of its war machine will come to a complete halt. It's time to delve into the technical details of that 50,000 robots hook I dropped at the beginning of the video. In his national address on the evening of April 27th, Zelensky announced that 50,000 unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, would be delivered to the army by 2026 alone. This figure represents a metal wall that will render Russia's numerical superiority in the trenches completely meaningless. The new doctrine of drone legend Robert Magyar Brovdi comes into play right here. Deep kill zone. Magyar's new strategy involves establishing such an unmanned fire zone between the front line and the rear areas Russia considers safe that not a single Russian soldier can enter it alive. In this system, drones monitor, artificial intelligence selects targets, and a 50,000 robot ground army carries out the execution. This is what Poland and other allies are watching in amazement. Ukraine has reduced the war to the speed of a software update. Did a robot make a mistake on the battlefield? The software is updated, and 10 minutes later, another 1,000 robots, which don't make the same mistake, deploy to the front lines. Do you think Russia is on the verge of throwing in the towel in the face of this technological and economic attrition? Or does the Kremlin still have a move up its sleeve? Will Ukraine's smart drone warfare model be remembered as a turning point in modern military history? Please share your predictions in the comments. We will continue to track this technological and strategic revolution second by second. Information is the most powerful weapon in this new generation of warfare. Keep your mind and vision sharp, because the geopolitical storm has only just begun. I'm Charlie. On behalf of the MrGEOPOL team, thank you for watching. See you in the next critical analysis. Stay safe, stay well.